Ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by asking you something. How many more endless wars, how many more blank checks, how many more failed promises will it take before Americans finally wake up? Because today, as we stand here, one headline dominates the political landscape: Trump washing his hands of the Ukraine war. And the question we must ask is not simply about Donald Trump, but about what this moment reveals about America, its foreign policy, its economy, and ultimately its future. Every dollar that Washington sends to Ukraine is not some abstract number. It's not money floating in the air. It's a direct subtraction from the wealth of American families. Think about it. Every billion that the government ships overseas could have gone to easing the burden of inflation, strengthening small businesses, or helping struggling households keep the lights on. Yet, instead, politicians treat it as if it were free, as if they could conjure resources out of thin air without consequences. The truth is unavoidable. When America funds a foreign war, you are the one paying the price, not in some distant future, but right now in the form of higher food prices, skyrocketing rents, diminished savings, and a future that looks increasingly uncertain for your children. This is the hidden tax of war, the theft no one wants to talk about, and the one cost you cannot escape. If you think the billions to Ukraine don't affect you, just look at your grocery bill, your mortgage, your shrinking paycheck. Inflation is not some natural phenomenon. It is the direct result of Washington's reckless spending and the Federal Reserve's reckless printing. Every time a politician announces a new aid package, remember that it's not charity. It's a bill you are forced to pay whether you agree or not. They disguise it with noble words like defending democracy, but what they're really doing is defending a broken system that survives only by exploiting its citizens. And make no mistake, it is you, the average American worker, who is footing the bill. When you hear about aid to Ukraine, ask yourself, who is really being aided? Are struggling American families being helped? Are small businesses drowning under regulations and costs being helped? Of course not. The money flows into the pockets of defense contractors, corrupt officials, and bureaucrats who thrive on endless war. Meanwhile, the American middle class, the backbone of the nation, gets weaker, poorer, and more frustrated. This is the same story we've seen again and again. Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan wars fought under lofty banners, but financed with the blood and sweat of ordinary Americans. How many times must history repeat before people recognize the scam for what it is? While we pretend to be defending democracy abroad, we are undermining it at home. Real democracy is when citizens are free to enjoy the fruits of their labor, when families can build wealth without watching it evaporate through hidden taxes like inflation. Real democracy is when the people have a say in how their resources are used, yet Washington strips you of that choice by making decisions in smoky back rooms, approving trillions in spending without asking, without consent, and without accountability. That's not democracy. It's theft dressed up in patriotic language. Every dollar spent on Ukraine is a dollar that could have been invested in America's future. Imagine what even a fraction of those billions could have done for infrastructure, for education, for healthcare, for innovation. Instead, those resources are wasted in a conflict that does nothing to strengthen America, but everything to weaken it further. This is not just about economics. It's about priorities, about values. If a nation consistently chooses war over its own people, can it truly call itself free? Can it truly call itself prosperous? The most dangerous lie of all is the idea that these sacrifices are temporary, that once the war ends, prosperity will return. That is the same false promise given in every era, and it has never been true. Once the government expands its spending, once the debt rises, once the dollar weakens, there is no easy way back. The inflation you feel today will not vanish tomorrow. The debt your children inherit will not disappear magically. Every war dollar is permanent damage, an invisible wound carved into the fabric of the economy, a wound that only grows deeper as the spending continues. So the next time you hear a politician say it's only a few billion more, don't shrug it off. Remember the hook. That few billion is your money, your sacrifice, your stolen future. Every dollar that flies out of Washington toward Ukraine is a dollar taken from your table, your savings account, your children's opportunities. And until we stand up and say enough, until we demand accountability, they will keep raiding the wealth of this nation to fuel conflicts that have nothing to do with your freedom. The war is not just over there, it's here in your wallet, in your household, in your future. Wars don't just destroy nations overseas, they bankrupt the nations that fund them, and history is overflowing with warnings that we continue to ignore. Every empire that believed it could project endless power abroad eventually collapsed under the weight of its own debt, its own inflation, and its own arrogance. Rome didn't fall because its enemies stormed the gates. It fell because the empire bled itself dry trying to maintain wars it could no longer afford. Today, America is walking that same path, draining its treasury to fight battles that have no end and no benefit for the American people. When we write blank checks for Ukraine, we are not buying peace, we are buying bankruptcy, and the bill is coming due faster than anyone wants to admit. Here's the hook. Every missile fired, every tank delivered, every aid package approved is not just a blow to Russia. It's a blow to you. It's a blow to your retirement account, your savings, your future. The government spends as if money were limitless, but money borrowed must be repaid, and money printed must be devalued. That means higher inflation, higher taxes, and higher interest rates for generations of Americans who had no say in these wars. The battlefield may be in Ukraine, but the collateral damage is here at home. Think about how wars are always sold. Politicians tell us they are temporary, necessary, noble. They promise quick victories, limited costs, and lasting security. Yet the result is always the same. The wars drag on, the costs balloon, and the nation funding them weakens from within. Look at Afghanistan, 2 decades, trillions of dollars, countless lives lost. And in the end, what did America gain? Nothing but debt, humiliation, and broken promises. And now, with Ukraine, we are repeating the exact same cycle, only this time at a moment when our economy is far more fragile, our debt far greater, and our currency far weaker. The middle class always pays the highest price. It's not the elite in Washington who feel the sting of inflation. It's not the defense contractors who struggle to pay higher mortgage rates. It's not the politicians who watch their savings lose value. It is the ordinary American worker, the family trying to survive on shrinking paychecks, the young people burdened with student debt and hopeless about their future. They are the ones crushed when a nation chooses endless war over fiscal sanity. They are the ones who watch the American dream slip further out of reach while billions are shipped to foreign battlefields. And here is the bitter reality: wars don't end when the last shot is fired. The economic damage lingers for decades. The debt incurred must be serviced. The inflation sparked by reckless spending takes years, sometimes generations, to unwind. By the time the smoke clears on the battlefield, the real destruction has already taken place in the economy. And that is why the Ukraine war, financed by U.S. taxpayers, is not just about Ukraine. It's about America's collapse under its own financial burden. If you doubt this, look at the national debt clock. Look at the trillions we already owe. Then ask yourself, how many more wars can America afford before the world finally loses confidence in the dollar? How long before the rest of the globe decides they no longer want to fund our reckless empire, no longer want to hold our weakening currency, no longer want to subsidize our endless spending? That moment is coming, and when it does, the fallout will not be contained. The dollar will collapse, inflation will surge, and the prosperity we once took for granted will vanish. So let's be clear, wars are never free, and they are never temporary. They may end on the battlefield, but the costs echo through the economy for decades. Every dollar spent fighting Russia in Ukraine is a dollar stolen from your children's future. Every package passed in Washington brings America one step closer to insolvency. This is not speculation. This is a mathematical certainty. The question is whether we wake up before it's too late. Here's the final hook. Empires do not fall because of enemies of abroad. They fall because they bankrupt themselves trying to fight them. America's greatest threat is not Russia, not China, not any foreign power. It is the debt, the inflation, and the reckless policies created right here at home. If we continue down this path, history will write the same story about us that it wrote about Rome, a great power that fell not from defeat in war, but from bankruptcy in peace. You cannot bomb your way to prosperity, and yet that is exactly what Washington has been selling for decades. Politicians speak as though launching missiles and writing foreign aid checks are somehow investments in America's future. They want you to believe that every dollar spent on military interventions creates stability, security, and growth. But the truth is the opposite. War consumes wealth. It does not create it. It destroys resources, it wastes capital, and it robs generations of the opportunity to build a stronger nation. No empire in history has bombed itself into prosperity, and America will not be the first. While the government fires weapons abroad, it's firing inflation bullets into your wallet at home. The bombs don't just fall in Ukraine, they fall in your grocery store, in your rent payment, in your retirement account. The Federal Reserve prints the money to finance these endless wars, but printing money does not produce prosperity. It produces inflation, and inflation is nothing more than legalized theft. You work harder, yet your paycheck buys less. You save diligently, yet your savings lose value. This is not a side effect of war. It is the direct cost of war. When was the last time Washington said, "Well, can't afford this war"? Never. There's always another blank check, another loan, another printing spree. But what they never admit is that every war dollar has to come from somewhere. Either they take it directly through taxes or they take it indirectly through inflation. Either way, the American people pay the price, and the elites in Washington keep pretending they've made you safer. But what safety is there when you can't afford a home? What safety is there when the price of food climbs faster than your wages? What safety is there when your future is mortgaged to fund a conflict you never voted for? It is time to strip away the illusion. War doesn't just kill on the battlefield, it kills opportunity at home. Every tank that rolls into Ukraine could have been a factory built in America. Every missile that explodes overseas could have been a small business thriving here. Every aid package to a foreign government could have been relief for families crushed under inflation. This isn't simply a matter of bad economics, it's a matter of priorities. A nation that values empire over its own citizens is a nation that has lost its way. The very people who claim to defend freedom abroad are the same ones eroding freedom at home. When inflation eats away at your earnings, when you are forced to choose between saving and surviving, that is not freedom, it is economic slavery. And every time the Fed runs the printing presses to fund war, it tightens the chains a little more. They may call it stimulus, they may call it aid, but you feel it for what it really is: theft. War spending doesn't just steal money, it steals time. Time you could have spent building wealth, securing a future for your children, or investing in innovation. Instead, that time is lost, swallowed by inflation and debt, forcing families to work harder just to stay in place. The bombs don't stop exploding when the war ends. They keep exploding in the economy for years, even decades. That is why wars are never over when Washington says they are. Their costs linger and their damage compounds. You cannot bomb your way to prosperity because prosperity is built, not destroyed. It comes from hard work, savings, innovation, and stability. It comes from investing in your own people, not sending their wealth to foreign lands. Washington's war machine does not create, it only consumes. And the longer we tolerate this lie, the more we forfeit our future. The real war is not being fought in Ukraine. It's being fought in your household budget, in your dwindling savings, in your children's chances at a better life. And unless Americans stand up and reject the illusion, the bombs will keep falling, not just abroad, but on the very foundation of our economy. Leadership is not washing your hands, it is taking a stand. Anyone can step away from responsibility when the costs become too great, but true leadership means confronting the truth, even when that truth is uncomfortable, unpopular, or dangerous to the status quo. When Trump signals that he is washing his hands of the Ukraine war, many people see it as a bold move, a break from the establishment's endless appetite for conflict. And yes, it is refreshing to hear a politician say out loud that this is not America's fight. But here's the hook. It isn't enough to simply withdraw your own responsibility. You must challenge the entire system that creates these wars in the first place. A leader does not point to the fire and then walk away. A leader works to put it out before it consumes the whole house. Yet in Washington, most politicians pretend the fire isn't there at all. They distract you with rhetoric about democracy and security while they continue to pour gasoline on the flames by approving new spending bills, new aid packages, and new weapon shipments. Leadership would mean standing before the American people and saying, we can't afford this anymore. Our economy is breaking. Our future is at risk. We must change course now. But almost no one has the courage to speak these words. They would rather protect their careers than protect the country. Leadership is not measured by how many wars you fund. It is measured by how much truth you are willing to tell. And the truth is that America is drowning in debt, weakened by inflation, and stretched thin by commitments we can no longer sustain. The people in Washington know this, yet they hide it because admitting it would force them to face their own failures. It is easier to wash their hands and walk away than to look Americans in the eye and tell them the storm is coming. But the real power, the real leadership does not come from the politicians. It comes from the people. Politicians rarely lead, they follow. They move when they sense that the public will no longer tolerate their lies. That means the responsibility shifts to you, the citizen, the worker, the taxpayer. When enough people demand an end to endless wars, demand accountability for reckless spending, and demand real solutions for inflation and debt, the politicians will have no choice but to act. That is where leadership must begin, not with one man making a gesture, but with millions of Americans refusing to allow their future to be stolen. Think about the difference between a politician who says, "This war is not ours," and a leader who says, "This war must end, and we must stop the system that created it." The first is washing your hands. The second is taking a stand. A true leader is not afraid to confront the military industrial complex, the special interests, the lobbyists who profit from conflict. A true leader is willing to say no, even when the entire establishment screams yes. That kind of courage is rare, but is the only kind of leadership that can save a nation on the brink of financial collapse. Every time a politician washes their hands, they leave the dirt on yours. They may walk away clean, but you are left with the debt, the inflation, the broken promises. That is why it is not enough to cheer when someone says they want no part of the Ukraine war. Words are easy. What matters is action, demanding accountability, cutting off the flow of money, refusing to allow Washington to use your future as currency for their failed ambitions. Leadership is not silence. Leadership is not evasion. Leadership is not waiting for someone else to fix the problem. Leadership is truth telling. Leadership is sacrifice. Leadership is standing firm when it is easier to walk away. And until America sees more of that, until Americans themselves begin to lead by refusing to accept the lies, nothing will change. Washing your hands is the easy way out. Taking a stand is the only way forward. America's greatest battle is not in Ukraine. It is here at home. And the tragedy is that almost no one in Washington seems to understand it. Politicians act as if the real threat to the United States is on some distant battlefield, as though the survival of this nation hinges on whether Ukraine wins or loses against Russia. But here's the hook. The enemy that can truly bring America to its knees is not thousands of miles away. It is right here in the reckless policies, the unsustainable debt, and the destruction of our own economy from within. The battlefield is your household budget, your paycheck, your savings account. That's where the fight for America's future is really being waged. And right now, we are losing. Consider what endless spending and inflation have already done. Prices are climbing faster than wages. Debt is rising faster than growth. And the dollar is losing credibility faster than Washington can spin its lies. Families are making impossible choices every day. Do they pay for groceries or gas? Do they save for the future or just survive the week? This is not freedom. This is not prosperity. This is what happens when a nation pours its resources into wars abroad while ignoring the crisis burning within its borders. And let me be blunt, the more we focus on Ukraine, the less we focus on America and the more vulnerable we become. Russia cannot bankrupt America, but Washington can. Russia can't not inflate the dollar into oblivion, but the Federal Reserve already has. Russia cannot bury your children in debt, but Congress does it every time it votes for another spending bill. The threats we are told to fear are distractions from the real danger, the danger of a nation hollowing itself out from the inside while pretending to be strong on the outside. That is why the greatest battle is not being fought overseas. It is being fought in whether we have the courage to confront our own decline. History proves this lesson over and over. Empires don't collapse because of a single war. They collapse because they sacrifice their economic foundations to maintain the illusion of power. Rome debased its currency until its money was worthless. Britain bankrupted itself, trying to hold on to an empire it could no longer afford. And now America, blinded by arrogance, is repeating the same mistakes. We think we can finance foreign wars forever, but the truth is unavoidable. We can't even afford to finance ourselves anymore. Every dollar spent abroad is a dollar not invested in America's strength. Every war package to Ukraine is another school unfunded, another bridge unrepaired, another community left behind. And while Washington insists that defending Ukraine defends democracy, the reality is that ignoring America's collapse destroys it. Democracy cannot thrive in a bankrupt nation. Prosperity cannot survive in a system built on lies and debt. If the economy falls, everything else falls with it. So where should the real fight be? It should be in restoring fiscal sanity. It should be in defending the value of the dollar. It should be in protecting the purchasing power of American families. It should be in creating conditions where businesses can grow, workers can prosper, and savings can actually hold their value. That is the battlefield that matters, and yet it is the one Washington refuses to step onto. Why? Because there is no profit for the political class in defending you. There is only profit in defending the system that makes them rich at your expense. If America loses this battle at home, it won't matter what happens in Ukraine. It won't matter what happens in the Middle East, in Asia, or anywhere else. A nation that cannot defend its own economy, its own currency, its own people is already defeated. The collapse won't come from missiles or tanks. It will come from empty wallets, worthless savings, and broken trust. That is how empires end, and that is the path we are already on unless we change course immediately. The battle is not out there. It is right here. And if Americans don't wake up to that fact, if they continue to believe that power abroad matters more than prosperity at home, they will watch their nation crumble not from enemy invasion, but from internal decay. The real enemy is not Russia. The real enemy is debt, inflation, and the lies that keep it alive. And unless we fight that enemy, there will be nothing left to defend. The time to act is not tomorrow, not someday, not when it's convenient. The time to act is now. That is the reality Americans must face if they want to preserve their future. Washington will always tell you that there is more time, that the problems can be kicked down the road, that deficits don't matter, that the dollar will always hold its value, that inflation is just temporary. But here's the hook: there is no more time. Every day of delay makes the crisis deeper, the debt larger, and the collapse more certain. You cannot solve tomorrow's problems by ignoring them today. That is how nations fall, and that is exactly where America is headed. Every great collapse in history had one thing in common. People thought they had more time than they really did. They thought the warning signs could be ignored, that the storm could be weathered, that the empire was too big to fail. Rome thought it. Britain thought it. Every debtor nation that collapsed under its own weight thought it. And now America, the largest debtor nation in the history of the world, is being lulled into the same deadly complacency. We are told that deficits are harmless, that the national debt is manageable, that printing money is a solution, not a poison. But the math is unforgiving. Debt is not just numbers on a screen. It is the chains on the future of every American child. And the longer we wait, the heavier those chains become. When Washington spends money it doesn't have, it steals from you twice, once through taxes and again through inflation. The taxes are visible. The inflation is invisible, but both rob you of your freedom, your security, and your future. And every new spending bill, every new war package, every new bailout only accelerates the theft. So ask yourself, how much longer will you tolerate it? How much longer will you let your paycheck shrink, your savings evaporate, your future disappear, While politicians in Washington assure you everything is fine, acting now means recognizing that the real emergency is not in Ukraine, not in the Middle East, not anywhere overseas. The real emergency is here at home. It is the collapse of the dollar, the rise of inflation, the mountain of debt that can never be repaid. These are not distant problems. They are unfolding right now in your daily life. The higher grocery bills, the unaffordable housing, the crushing student debt, the shrinking retirement accounts. This is what the collapse looks like in real time. If you are waiting for a bell to ring or a headline to announce the crisis, you've already missed it. The crisis is here, and the danger of waiting is that once the tipping point comes, it will be too late to act. When the world finally loses confidence in the dollar, when inflation truly spirals out of control, when the debt market sees up, there will be no warning and no way back. America will not get a second chance to reverse course. That is why urgency is everything. Every day wasted is a day closer to disaster. Every moment of complacency is a nail in the coffin of America's prosperity. Your children and grandchildren will live in the world created by today's inaction. If we act now, they may inherit a nation still capable of recovery, still capable of rebuilding. If we wait, they will inherit nothing but debt, despair, and decline. That is not speculation. It is the unavoidable outcome of inaction. The window is closing, and it is closing fast. So do not look to tomorrow. Do not hope that someone else will fix it. Do not believe the comforting lies of politicians who tell you there's nothing to worry about. There is everything to worry about, and the time to worry is now. Leadership means urgency. Survival means urgency. And if America wants to survive as a prosperous nation, it must abandon the illusion of time and embrace the responsibility of action immediately, decisively, and without delay. Because once the collapse comes, the opportunity will be gone, and the cost of waiting will be paid in the permanent decline of the nation itself.